Now let's get back to the alimentary canal, and our next stop along the alimentary canal is the stomach. So the stomach is a tubular organ that extends from the stomach to the large intestine. So here's the stomach, here's the large intestine. It's about 20 feet in length. Let's take a look at the functions of the small intestine. One, it completes the digestion of nutrients in the chyme, meaning we're going to completely break them down into those simpler compounds so we can absorb them. It's going to absorb the products of digestion. And then lastly, it's going to transport those residues to the large intestine. Parts of the small intestine, the beginning of the small intestine is called the duodenum. The duodenum receives secretions, right here's the duodenum again. It receives secretions from the pancreas, the liver, and the gallbladder. Next, the middle portion of the small intestine is called the jejunum. And then the end part of the small intestine is called the ileum. Now there is a membrane associated with this, and that is called the mesentery. So the mesentery is a double layer fold of peritoneal membrane. So peritoneal membrane is a serous membrane. It suspends the small intestine, and it also provides, it supports blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatic vessels to the small intestine. All right, so not an actual part of the small intestine, but strongly associated with it. All right, let's look at the structure of the small intestine. Now, the structure of our small intestine is designed to absorb nutrients, and in this, we have a lot of surface area in our small intestine. We have all these ridges and these finger-like projections called intestinal villi in here. And even on each of the plasma membranes, we have these smaller things called microvilli. All of this gives our small intestine a lot of surface area. So much surface area, it's about 2,100 square feet. So we can absorb a lot of nutrients. So these intestinal villi here, these are tiny projections into the lumen, which is the space of the small intestine. All right. So as I said, they increase surface area so they can absorb more nutrients. They also contain in their blood capillaries, lymphatic vessels, and nerve fibers. Those lymphatic vessels are called a lacteal. Next are intestinal glands, which you can see here. Intestinal glands are tubular glands at the base of a villus within the intestinal wall. They are also going to secrete enzymes, so they're going to secrete peptidases, which break down proteins, lipases, which break down fats and oils, lipids, amylases, which break down carbohydrates, and so on. All right. We're also going to see like finishing products. So they're going to create sucrase, which breaks down sucrose, that disaccharide, maltase, which breaks down maltose, and then lactase, which breaks down lactose. So looking at absorption in our small intestine, it is the most important absorptive organ. So most of the absorption of nutrients occurs here. And so with some of this, it's fairly simple. So the broken down products of carbohydrates, proteins, and nucleic acids are just going to simply diffuse into the blood, and we absorb those nutrients that way. Same with vitamins and minerals by simple diffusion into the bloodstream. Osmosis, so water is going to follow by osmosis. But the one group, the broken down products of fats and oils, which are fatty acids and glycerol, are going to move into these intestinal cells. We're going to encase those things in proteins, and then from there they move to a lacteal, and from there they move through the lymphatic system, and they eventually are going to drain into venous circulation. So, that eventually gets to our blood. It's a longer route though. Let's look at movements in the small intestine. So looking at movements here, we have a mixing movement, but it's primarily a propelling movement. Chyme is usually in our small intestine from 3 to 10 hours. All right. So if our small intestine is over-distended, meaning it's overstretched, okay, or if it's irritated, a peristaltic rush may occur. And that's where we're going to push all of the contents into the large intestine. And so the problem with that is not everything gets absorbed. And this leads to diarrhea, which is a frequent and watery stool. So if your intestinal lining is irritated, like by an infection, you're trying to get rid of that infection out of you. So that's what causes that diarrhea. All right, let's move on to the large intestine. So this is showing a picture of our entire large intestine. So this is a tubular organ that extends from the ileum, which is the end of the small intestine, to the anus. All right, so let's look at parts of the small intestine. The first is the cecum. So this is a sac that houses bacteria. Off of that is appendix, and an appendix is a remnant of a much larger cecum. So our ancestors ate more herbs, plants, and so they had a larger cecum to break down all that plant matter. So as humans move from being herbivores, eating plants, to being omnivores, eating plants and animals, that cecum reduced to the size it is today, and an appendix is a remnant of that much larger cecum. All right. So next from this, our large intestine actually goes up. So this is where your down here is where your cecum is, and you're going to go up, across, and then back down. So this is the ascending colon. Here's a transverse colon, the descending colon, and then we have this S-shaped structure here at the end, and that's known as the sigmoid colon. We have the rectum, and then the anus. All right. Now, so the anal canal and anus. So this is showing a blow-up of the rectum, anal canal, and then the anus, which is just the opening. All right. One of the things I want to show you here in the rectum is you can see this rectal valve. And what rectal valves do is they separate feces from flatus. So they separate your poop from your farts. So that way you can pass gas, fart, without defecating, pooping at the same time. So that's what's handy about those rectal valves. Now, sometimes your rectum gets a little confused. I'm not going to get into all that right now. All right, so in our anus, we have two sets of muscles. We have the internal anal sphincter here, and outside of that is the external anal sphincter. Now, the internal anal sphincter is smooth muscle, so that's not under voluntary control, that's involuntary. But we have the external anal sphincter outside of that, and that is made of skeletal muscle, and that gives us voluntary control over defecation. Let's look at the functions of our large intestine. So here, there is little to no digestive functions occurring anymore. So we're not breaking food down anymore, all right? It does absorb water and electrolytes. So this is one of the things that occurs with diarrhea is you're moving stuff very quickly through there. You're not reabsorbing all this water that's in our in our digestive tract. And this is why diarrhea can lead to dehydration and also an electrolyte imbalance, because this is where we're going to absorb some of those things. We also are going to secrete mucus there that's going to protect the walls from abrasion, and it also helps bind the fecal matter. Once again, with diarrhea, if things are moved too quickly through there, we don't get that mucus coating, so we don't see these formed, the formed feces, which we do normally do. So diarrhea doesn't give us that as well. Next is intestinal flora. So intestinal flora is bacteria that normally inhabits the large intestine. So this is why you need to wash your hands after you poop, because you might have some of that fecal bacteria on you, so you want to wash that off. Now, why we have this is it's a mutualistic relationship. We give them a nice place to live, food all the time, and what they're going to do is they're going to break down some molecules for us, and in doing so, they're going to synthesize some vitamins. So vitamin K, some B vitamins, all right? And so we're going to absorb those. So, so that's nutrients for us. So we both benefit from that situation, all right? One of the things, though, is they will produce gas. So that's where that gas comes from. Looking at movements here, so we have mixing and propelling movements that occur here. And we're going to gradually move feces here to our rectum. Once the feces gets to our rectum, that's going to initiate the defecation reflex. All right? Now, that's a normal situation. What you can also have is a mass movement. And this is where peristaltic waves in large sections of the large intestine will contract. That's going to force substances to the rectum. All right? So I don't want you to try to imagine this. Here we have a picture showing feces in the rectum. Once we get feces in the rectum, either through these slow, gradual processes or through a mass movement, that's going to trigger a defecation reflex. So here, the rectum fills, and this is going to cause a relaxation of both the internal and external anal sphincters. All right? Now, you can voluntarily contract those external anal sphincters. Now, what you can also do is you can try to get this to work. You can put a lot of pressure into your abdominal pelvic cavity, squeezing the feces into the rectum as well. But what we get out of here, obviously, is feces. This is material expelled from the digestive tract during defecation. This is the undigested or unabsorbed materials. There's water in here. It's like 75% water, so mostly water. Electrolytes and mucus. And you also have bacteria and some shed intestinal cells. Now, the color of it is due to bile and also due to bacterial action. And the odor is due to the bacterial action as well. Now, I do want to preface one thing for you guys. A little caution here is that because there are shed intestinal cells in our feces, don't commit a crime and then poop in that area. So, because what they can do is they can get your DNA off of your poop and find out that it was you. So don't murder somebody and poop on the body, because then they can find out who you are, right? Okay, so that seems silly. I understand that, right? And I've been saying that joke for kind of, I don't know, 10 plus years. Well, about 2 years ago, I realized I wasn't just saying a joke. I was actually giving advice. Because about 2 years ago, I found this article. And as you can see here, DNA in an unflushed toilet snares a California burglary suspect. So this dude broke into a business. He robbed the business, no one was present. He burgled the business, but he also decided to use the bathroom while he was there. He pooped in the toilet and didn't flush it. And because he didn't flush the toilet, well, they got DNA off of that and figured out it was him. So all these years, I thought I was giving some silly little joke, when in fact, I was giving advice.